Every crown carries a weight that the world never sees. For King David, the man who unified a nation and defeated giants, the heaviest burden wasn't the wars abroad, but the silence within his own home. He wasn't betrayed by a foreign empire or a rival claimant. He was hunted by his own flesh and blood. This is a story of how a family's internal fracture nearly tore the kingdom of Israel apart at its very seams. Jerusalem was in its golden age. David had reached the pinnacle of earthly power, building a legacy that seemed destined to last for eternity. The city was a beacon of light, but as with all great lights, the shadows it cast were deep and long. In the corridors of the palace, the unity of the tribes was celebrated, but the unity of the king's own house was silently disintegrating. Power, it seems, is a poor shield against the rot of unresolved pain. The tragedy began not with a trumpet blast, but with a horrific silence. When David's daughter Tamar was violated by her half-brother Amnon, the king's response was nothing. No justice, no rebuke, only a devastating quiet that filled the halls. For Absalom, Tamar's full brother, that silence was a poison. For 2 years he watched his father, and for 2 years his love for a king transformed into the cold, calculated rage of a rebel. He nurtured his anger in the shadows of the palace. The revenge was as swift as it was bloody. At a royal banquet, Absalom struck down Amnon, ending the silence with the sound of a blade. He fled into exile, a fugitive from his father's house. But even when he was finally allowed to return to Jerusalem, the distance remained. David refused to see his son's face. For 2 years, father and son lived as strangers in the same city. It was in this vacuum of connection that Absalom's ambition truly took root. He realized that if he couldn't be a son, he would be a king. Absalom's takeover was a masterpiece of political manipulation. Every single morning, he would stand at the city gate, the crossroads of justice. When a man came with a legal case, Absalom would listen with empathy that the king seemed to lack. He would nod, he would agree, and he would whisper the most dangerous words in any kingdom. If only I were judge in the land, then every man with a complaint could come to me, and I would give him justice. He didn't just win their minds, he stole their hearts, one handshake at a time. After 4 years of this careful theater, the trap was ready. Under the guise of a religious vow, Absalom went to Hebron, the ancient capital. But the secret signal had already been sent across the tribes. As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then say, Absalom is king in Hebron. The rebellion was no longer a palace secret. It was a nationwide revolution. The people, feeling forgotten by an aging David, flocked to the young, beautiful prince. Suddenly, the man who killed Goliath was no longer safe in his own city. David did not choose to turn Jerusalem into a slaughterhouse. He fled. Barefoot, his head covered in shame, he walked up the Mount of Olives, weeping with every step. The mighty warrior who had conquered nations was now a fugitive, hunted by his own child. He left behind his throne, his wives, and his dignity, entrusting his very life back to the wilderness where he had once been a shepherd. This was the ultimate humiliation, a harvest of the seeds of silence he had sown years before. The kingdom of Israel was fractured in two. Brother was forced to choose between loyalty to the old king or hope in the new. In Jerusalem, Absalom sat on David's throne, but in the wilderness, David gathered his most loyal warriors. The stage was set for a civil war that would determine the soul of the nation. Yet, even as he prepared for the clash, David's heart was still that of a father. His final command to his generals was a plea: deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. In the face of a son's sword, the father offered a shield of mercy. The final confrontation happened in the forest of Ephraim. It was a chaotic, nightmarish struggle where the terrain itself seemed to fight against the rebels. The forest claimed more lives than the blade. Absalom, riding through the thick brush, found his pride became his downfall. His long, beautiful hair tangled in the low branches of a massive oak tree. His horse ran on, leaving him suspended, helpless and exposed. The rebellion that began with such grandeur ended in a thicket far from the throne he craved. Ignoring the king's plea, the spears were thrown. Absalom, the prince of Israel, was struck down and buried in a nameless pit in the woods. The rebellion was crushed, but for David, the victory was the most devastating defeat of his life. When the messengers arrived at the palace, he didn't ask about the borders or the soldiers. He asked only one thing: is the young man Absalom safe? The silence that followed was the answer that broke the king forever. The halls of Jerusalem echoed with a cry that has never truly gone silent. "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." David had his kingdom back, but he had lost his heart. The throne was secure, but the family was a ruin. It is a haunting reminder that power, once restored, cannot heal the scars of a broken home. Ambition can build a city, but only a father's love knows the true cost of losing it. The story of David and Absalom is more than a historical footnote. It is a timeless reflection on the consequence of silence and the tragedy of ambition. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into one of history's most emotional betrayals. If you found meaning in this story, please subscribe for more untold chapters from our past. The greatest battles are often the ones we fight within ourselves.